Good evening. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 to 22, Paul says, "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessing." The Great Commission commands us to go make disciples of all nations. This command was taken seriously by the apostles, and in the book of Acts we read that thousands were being converted. Their message was so powerful, and their witness so effective, that in Acts chapter 17 verse 6, they were accused of causing trouble all over the world. Tonight, we shall see how Paul carried out this mandate, and from his example, we can discover what we need to have as Christians so that we can win lost people back to God. Paul demonstrates how he did more than is required. We also see this happening in offices, where we award model employees for doing their job beyond what was expected of them. In the military, medals are awarded for courage beyond the call of duty. And even during the period when you were still courting your wife, you were always doing something extra and exerting best efforts to win her. Now, if you are willing to go the extra mile for your employer, a friend, a girlfriend, your children, your country, or your spouse, wouldn't you go the extra mile to save some souls for Christ? Would you give it all you've got in order to bring the lost back to God? Paul did. He tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 to 23, that he became a slave to all men. He became as a Jew to the Jews, as a Gentile to the Gentiles, as under the law, though not being himself under the law, became weak that he might win the weak, and became all things to all men that he may save some. He didn't have to be all of this, but he was willing to go the extra mile to win souls to God. What was Paul thinking? That he gave up his freedom and willingly became a servant to all. It certainly defies human logic, where the world teaches us to focus on ourselves, to always be first in line. But if we have the me-first attitude, then we will never feel responsible for what happens to those we leave behind. In Mark chapter 10, verse 45, Jesus tells us the answer to that question. "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." Here we see that Jesus is God. He never stopped being God. He is sovereign, yet he came here not to be served, but to serve. God became man, became one of us, laid aside his glory and put on the form of a servant for us. Christ emptied himself and became a servant, dying on the cross so that we could be saved. In Philippians, Paul tells us that our attitude should be the same as that of Jesus. Paul himself followed the example of Jesus. Paul emptied himself of his rights and privileges as a free man and made himself a servant to all men so that he may save some. Now in your life, in our own life, would you empty yourself of your freedom and privileges the way Paul and Jesus did to save others? Our goal as a Christian is to glorify God. Our mission that flows from that goal is to win souls back to Him. In fulfilling that mission, will you go the extra mile and surrender your rights, step out of your comfort zone, and give up your privileges, if that is the price you need to pay to win souls for Christ? I pray that we all are willing to give all for Christ. Good night and God bless us all.